Today, I'm gonna show you how to animate in Procreate Basic, not Procreate Dreams, which is the separate animation program. To start, you need to activate what is called Animation Assist. So I'm in a new Procreate document right here, and we're going to click the settings up here and go to Canvas and tap Animation Assist. Animation Assist is gonna open up this little bar down here at the bottom where we can now look at our frames. You've got your play button over here, which is not gonna do anything right now. You've got your settings and you've got an add frame. Now, something I want to point out as you're getting started is when you add frames, they are going to come up as layers over here in your layers panel. So when you are creating a frame or a layer, it's basically the same thing. So kind of think of this area down here at the bottom, your Animation Assist timeline, as your layers just turned sideways. Now that we've got some frames added to our timeline, to draw on them, you're going to tap on them down here and it will swap between the layers or the frames that you're drawing on. So if I was to draw on this one right here, draw a quick little line, jump to this one, you'll see it turns a little bit transparent to show me that it's no longer right there. So I can draw one more right there, one more right here. I'll add another frame, draw right there. And now if we hit play, the line is gonna start moving a little bit because that's how we drew it. If you have multiple frames like this, if you go to the last frame or the first frame, you can turn these into special layers that are either your background or your foreground. So the one at the far left can be turned into a background layer, and the one in the far right can be turned into a foreground layer. So if I tap on either of those, they are going to have a little check mark right here that is different from the other layers. Like if I tap on this one in the middle, any of these, it's not gonna have that option. So I'm gonna tap on this one and click background and draw some mountains for us. And now those mountains are going to appear behind all of your frames. Similarly, we could turn this into a foreground layer, and now this will appear in front of all of your frame by frame layers that are sitting in the middle. Another helpful tool in your frame by frame timeline is hold frames. What hold frames are is if you are drawing and working on multiple frames like this, and you want one of them to last a little bit longer than the others, you can tap on one, so in this case, my middle frame, and there is a hold duration right here. If I increase and decrease the hold duration, you'll see that it's creating extra little transparent frames in between, and what that'll do is this one frame is now going to act like three. So if I go back and play, it'll kind of stop in the middle and hold on for a little bit. This can be helpful if you are doing like a kind of a bounce animation or something and you want a ball to get to the peak, hold on for a little bit and then come back down to give it a little bit of gravity. So now that I have a little ball animation going like this, maybe I want it to hold a little bit more at the top. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to that frame at the top, up my hold duration by 1. Actually, I'll up this one by 2, and then I'll come back to these ones and up these by 1. Now, without having to make a bunch of duplicates, it'll have a little bit of extra weight up there at the top, and I can always go back and easily adjust that hold duration without having to delete a bunch of frames, duplicate them, and all that stuff. Also, what's helpful here is now, if I was to go back to this one right here, I can also adjust that one hold duration, make the ball a bit bigger for some reason, and that will also go across all of your hold frames instead of having to go into each of those and adjust them individually. Okay, so we've got a clean timeline right here. I am going to start just drawing a ball. And as you can see, while I'm drawing, there's little slightly opaque, like little ghosts being left behind my animation. What is happening is it is showing you where your last frame was. And in this case, multiple last frames to help you while drawing your next ones. If you don't want all of those onion skins, what you can do is you can click on settings, and right now we have our onion skin frames set to max. I'm gonna bring this down to like 3 or 4. This will help them be a little less distracting. You can also lower the opacity a little bit and make them not as opaque. So now, when I go back and forth in my animation right here, I will have 4 frames ahead and 4 frames behind. Blend primary frame will kind of take whatever frame you are currently working on and blend it with your onion skins. So by default, this frame will appear on top, but what this one will do is it'll kind of place the onion skins on top of the primary frame and have them kind of more opaque. This is helpful when drawing characters and stuff like that, so you can see the whole like limb on top of it where it used to be. Another thing we've got in our settings is these three options right up here at the top. This is going to change how your animation plays back. By default, this is set to loop, which will just go from the first frame to the last frame repeatedly, like so. If you go to one shot, it will just play once, and then it'll stop. The next one though is ping pong. Your animation is gonna kind of toggle back and forth. So it'll go to the end, and then it'll come back to the beginning, and it'll keep going back and forth like so. So it goes boing, 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 boing. And then the last thing that you're going to want to play around with within these animation settings is your frames per second. Traditionally, animations play at about 12 frames per second. But if you're wanting it to play a bit faster, you can always up that to double, go to 24, and it'll go faster, look a little bit more smooth. And you can go all the way up to max, which I believe max is just 60 frames per second. And that looks a little ridiculous, but if you want to do that, you can. Once you have your animation playing back the way you want it to, you can come up here to the normal settings, click on share right here, and you want to come down here to share layers. So PDF and PNG files are not going to share it as animation. It's just going to export everything as individual images, or in the case of a PDF, them all stacked together in one PDF. But all these animated ones down here at the bottom will export your animation. So you can export directly as a GIF, an animated PNG, an animated MP4, or an animated HEVC, which is just a different compression method for video files. And that's how to get started with frame-by-frame animation in the standard Procreate app. If you're just wanting to kind of tinker around with animation and get used to things, this is a great place to start. It gives you basically everything you would need for frame-by-frame animation, which is also extremely helpful when paired with other tools like After Effects and Premiere, just places that you can do your frame-by-frame animation separate from them in a really clean interface that gives you just what you need, and then export them into a more complicated post-processing program like After Effects, Premiere, all that stuff. Hopefully this was helpful. Be sure to let me know if you have any questions or you'd like me to go over anything else with Procreate or any other design tools. So be sure to stick around, subscribe, like, do all that fun stuff. And yeah, bye-bye.